You know what time it is? It's time to get in the game with your host, Cynthia J.
Good Tuesday evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Listen, there's no place to be than right here joining us live on the Get in the Game set. I am your host, Cynthia J. And listen, you have nothing else to do because there's no sports on right now unless you're a Get in the Game family because, as you know, we have been rolling through and practicing our social distancing. So we're not violating any governmental mandates. But listen, y'all know how much I love sports, so there's no way. If there's a way for me to have a show, I'm going to have a show. So welcome back to our guest. It's been about a month, right?
It has,
and
yes.
guess what, guys? I have some amazing news for you. So if you've been following me on social media, you would know that I went ahead and posted our first show with Mr. Eldridge so that you can get caught up and you wouldn't be lost in the second conversation. But if you notice there at the end of the show, the last time he was on, we talked to him about creating a social media presence. And I am pleased to announce that Mr. Eldridge has a LinkedIn account. So, of course, at the end of the show, we'll remind you guys how you can get in touch with him. But head on over to LinkedIn, send him a message, request him, and we are going to build up his Facebook presence after this show. We were talking about that off cuss. But listen, so many things have changed in the state of our economy since we last met.
Right.
One thing that we talked about was the upcoming pro days, and you were giving advice to some of the student athletes. Well, some of that has come and gone. Some of it didn't even happen because, as we know, there was a virus that has broken out across the country. Just what have you been doing since we got the news that we should all stay inside? Technically, we are inside, but
I've been practicing my social distance.
Yeah.
Majority of the time remaining at home. My kids are at home now also. Have three little ones, 13, 10, 11 now. He just had a birthday. My 11-year-old Pierce and my daughter Lena, and my oldest is Nigel. So they're all at home doing homeschool. So assisting them there, working from home, trying to keep everything afloat for the most part, you know.
Yeah.
I think the most I've gotten out is probably to the park or maybe taking the dogs out for a little bit and grocery shopping.
Yeah.
It's a
Gotta go
continuum.
grocery shopping.
We gotta eat. We gotta eat.
Listen, how are you managing? Because one thing that I've enjoyed listening to people talk about is how everybody's home now. So the majority of people are not working, but the kids are home. Bread, milk, everything's going
Cereal.
faster.
Oh.
So how is the Eldridge household managing all of that?
Well, initially I've always had a free-for-all policy.
Yeah.
If they see it, they can eat it. I was fine with
Yeah.
that. But now it's like, okay, circumstances have changed. We got to get some kind of rules in place. So almost 3 hots in a cot meal.
Yeah.
Breakfast, lunch, dinner. You can get a snack. That's it.
Yeah.
Stay out of the refrigerator. If a meal's not prepared, I don't want you in my refrigerator.
Yes. And that's a lot of what everybody is experiencing. How has anything changed for you as far as sports? Because being a former professional athlete, one thing that you guys, kind of take pleasure in is enjoying sports in your downtime, in the down season. But now that nothing's on, how are you getting by?
I can't get in the gym.
Yeah,
Oh.
that's hard. Yeah.
So I've actually started back running. Because
Uh-huh.
I hadn't ran in probably 2 or 3 years. I've got some herniated disc in my lower back, but I've started back running because I can't get in the gym. And I'm like, looking in the mirror, my physique's changing a little bit, and I don't like it. So
Yeah.
actually getting back active there, just as far as being able to watch sports on TV, it is driving me nuts.
Mm-hmm.
This is a down season, I mean, for most of us because it's off season, so there's either more training, there's
Right.
pro days going on.
Right.
There's the draft that's coming up. So this is really the down season where a lot of us actually spend times with ourselves
Yeah.
and start doing personal training, mentorship, and getting back on the field, developing our skill set alone. So now that we have these restrictions in place, it makes it a little bit more difficult. So you got to be creative.
Yeah. So let me ask your opinion because a lot of what we see typically towards the end of March, beginning of April, is teams begin to have those in-person one-on-one meetings with their potential draft prospects, or they'll bring in free agents for workouts.
Right.
Guys are getting their physicals done by doctors, and a lot of that is not happening right now. So from your perspective, having been in the league, still dealing with the NFL alumni, how is the league going to maneuver around all of this?
It'll be tough. I think probably what it'll turn to is some of the what they consider doc in the box, to where you actually have to provide either telecom to speak with doctors. As far as getting a physical done, I'm sure that'll be done either in at-home basis or in a private facility. I don't think there'll be the continued social interaction that it was in mass, the way it's usually produced. So there'll be a lot of separation of personnel, and just the process itself, it'll be a lot more stringent than it was previously, because now it takes a little bit more time from a development perspective with all of the just social distances that we have to practice right now. So it's really taking a toll on the staff along with those upcoming players too.
Yeah, especially those, don't you think, who are recuperating from injuries? I mean, they can't necessarily get in the facility, get in touch with their equipment staff, their medical staff. So they're going to have to really kind of nurse themselves back to health on their own. Now, before we jump back into your story, which was more than exciting. I mean, so many people have been responding on YouTube to just how amazing your story was. Really quick, because I want to get your opinion on this, because you have experienced the free agency releasing waiver side. What was the most shocking transaction so far that you've seen happen in the NFL? Something that you weren't expecting to see, and then give your opinion of it.
Well, since I'm a home team guy, I'll state the obvious. This is Calais Campbell.
Yeah.
Because of what he's done in the community here, the kind of upper echelon player he really is, just to see that decision being made. I mean, from an investment standpoint, they're looking to get more bang for their buck, but you can replace a body, but you can't replace that personality and that player, you know.
Yeah.
So he brought so much to the organization. It's tough to see him go.
Will that bite them on the back end?
More than likely.
Yeah, you think so?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so let's jump back into your story. So where we left off was you were getting ready to make the transition from being released by Tennessee. You were completely shocked. You were at home when you got the call by your agents, because the team actually contacted your agents. They didn't contact you.
Right.
And so the phone starts ringing because now you're out on the waiver wire, and then what happens?
So I get a call from Detroit. Mark Mayhew was the guy. I think he's actually the GM now, but he was player personnel then. He gave me a call and said, we've got a spot open. One of the guys, I think he was a 5th-round draft pick at linebacker, was injured, and they wanted me to have the opportunity to come in. So immediately start packing. Of course, the phone starts ringing again from everybody else, because the name goes back across the bottom line, and it's like, okay, he got picked up again. So head to Detroit, get there. I actually had family there, so had an uncle and a couple cousins that were up in 7 Mile area. So made it to the campus, started physicals, went through the whole process as far as getting new equipment, going into what I consider to be the, what did I call it last time? It was more of a tailor room to where everything's tailor suited.
Yeah. So
being able to sit in there for a while and kind of get my bearings together. There was an hour difference in time for me. And then just understanding the playbook. So getting back in the grunt of things. They had some great guys on the staff at that time, with Dre Bly, Joy Harrington at quarterback, Earl Holmes, a local guy from down here at FAM. And Roy Williams at wide receiver. So there were some key guys there that kind of established themselves. So really figuring out where did I fit within that organization itself.
Yeah. Tell me how you dealt with the up and down emotions, because it almost seems like, you know, you can have a career that's like a roller coaster. Like, you're up one moment because you're on a squad, things are going well, you're fitting in with the team, you're becoming brothers with your teammates, get dropped, and you're kind of on the bottom of the roller coaster just for a minute, because as soon as your name goes out, your phone starts ringing again, then you're back up off to a new city. The emotions must be kind of crazy.
It's a roller coaster.
Yeah.
I think what helped me balance was just staying grounded in God. I took a lot of time out for myself and really focused on my dad because he was sick at the time. So being able to spend quality time with him, having those conversations, just not taking life for granted overall. And me being a country boy, I'd fish, had horses, so we go horseback ride and just back in nature.
Yeah.
Separating myself from all of the noise and antics that went on in the background that really could have drove me to a place of depression, just trying to separate myself at the time and reestablish who I was.
Yeah. So let's talk about your time in Detroit. So you got there during OTAs or training camp?
During training camp.
Okay, so you got there
Actually,
during training
training
camp. So one thing that I've noticed being a reporter about training camp, it is like extremely grueling. Like from the time that you wake up to the time that you're allowed to go to bed. Just give us kind of a snippet. Because back when you were playing, there were, and they still do it now, there were a lot more padded practices. Maybe not as hot in Detroit for training camp as it would be in Florida.
No, definitely not as hot.
Not as hot, but still the grueling schedule. So kind of give us a day in the life of an athlete, a football player during training camp.
So I probably get up about 5:30.
Yeah.
In the facilities by 6. We had meetings at 7:30, 8 o'clock where we watched film. So it was the previous practice, any kind of upcoming deliverables as far as playbook, new plays they were learning. So think about it, they were already in training camp.
Right.
So I'm playing catch up in the playbook.
Right.
So they're 2 or 3 weeks into the playbook, and here I am, the new guy on the block, trying to learn and play catch up so I can get some film time and have an opportunity to prove myself. From there, we go on the field for about 2 hours. Practice, it was still padded, but in a professional manner. So the rule that I had to learn as a rookie was that if you fell on the practice field, they pulled you.
Yeah.
Because they didn't want to take the risk of you falling and a player falling on you and it becoming a pile up and just continued injury. So you practice staying on your feet, you practice keeping each other healthy. And I think one of the key things along that path was just being a professional. Understanding that this is everybody's means and way of life.
Yes.
But not only yourself, but them and their families. So taking in consideration, taking care of one another as we continue to go through the day-to-day in and outs. So after a 2-hour practice, we'd have an hour lunch break, maybe an hour downtime in which either you were going to rehab, getting treatment, or you were in your playbook, and then you'd go back and repeat it all over again. So you pick back up, say 2 o'clock, back in the film room, back on the field at 3, probably done by 5, and then you had workouts.
Yeah.
So then you got to go back into the facility and go into the gym. Either you were doing kickboxing, weightlifting, there was a schedule. So everybody was on a set schedule till about 8:30, 9 o'clock. And then they release you for the night, in which you're going back to the hotel the majority of the time or continue to go and get treatment. And that was just the day in and out of it. I mean, 5:30 wake up every day. A lot of people just stayed in the facility. We had air mattresses, or you bring a cot and just kind of camp out there because you wanted to show you were truly engaged in the being there and being a part of that unique dynasty, as well as just, not missing a beat, letting everybody know that, you did want to be a part of the organization. You did want to move forward with being one of the players chosen there, and if there was any way you could get an up on a person, you wanted to have that advantage.
Yeah. So one thing you mentioned, let's just kind of pull out real quick and have this side conversation, because you mentioned something that's really interesting, and so I want to pick your brain on it. So we've seen the game change over the course of the past few years. We've seen rules change specifically, and we hear the NFL state that they are changing a lot of the rules to protect the players. Now, I've had the opportunity this past season to talk to some guys about, changes on the field. From your perspective, when you talk about this being, you guys' way of life, this is how you earn your paycheck. So even in practice, it's, hey, don't hurt your brother on the field because this is how he gets his paycheck. In your opinion, have a lot of the rules changed to really protect the player, or are we seeing a thing of it becoming more of an entertainment thing versus them really caring about the athlete?
So I'll state the obvious here. I am considered an old school player because the rules have changed.
A lot.
There was no targeting. There was no spearing when I was playing. You were taught to lead with your head.
Yeah.
Because your body followed your head. So that was just, to me, best practice. I think right now where you see the game going, it is more about the fans. It's more about high scoring. It's more about getting the fans engaged in the game. So in order for that to happen, they had to switch the rules around. I don't think it's protective of the players at all, because if you think about the shoulder tackling, the mechanism of tackling with a isolated body part like your arm or your leg, a limb, versus your core, it really dictates the outcome of who's going to win that battle. And being on the defensive side of it, if I'm reaching out at you and I'm using a limb to tackle somebody that's running at a 4.2 or 4.4 speed, and 230 or 240 pounds, this is not going to go well for me. So it's really not designed for the defense anymore. It's more of an offensive game. And that's why you see the spread offense coming into play too. So a lot more passing league, a lot more what I consider to be arm tackling, which gives the offensive player a lot more advantage.
Now, okay, we're going to keep going because, you know, the defensive side of the ball is what has always fascinated me, because I grew up with the defensive end of a father. So growing up, the sound of helmets clashing, yes, it gives me chills right now, like eat the turf. But at the same time, then you have a brother who plays, so it's like, no, don't hit, don't tackle like that.
I don't want him hurt.
At all, okay? Because if that's the case, I'm coming out of the stands. But from a linebacker's perspective, how difficult is it to have to change the way you've been playing since you were 4, 5, 6 years old, especially when you've been seeing the Ray Lewises of the game, the Clay Matthews, hit in such a way that you've been trying to mimic them, and now the league says, no more leading with the head. How difficult is it for a person, especially in your position where you're freelancing all over the field, just ready to pop the person who has the ball?
Right. It's very difficult because you think about your natural instinct. And so you're basically second guessing your ability at that point to make the tackle, and you have to do, in a split second, make a decision as far as whether you're going to pursue or not, you know. And you see a lot of people getting caught up in that split second moment to where either I'm leading with my head and now I got to pull back, or you see their posture change when they're trying to deliver a blow. It's tough.
And that could also create increase in percentage for the person about to deliver the blow to get injured, right? Because when you're in, I mean, this game is happening faster than we can imagine. So when you have a running back running towards you and you're like, oh, my head's right here, I need to kind of turn my shoulder, he's Melvin Gordon, Alvin Kamara,
right?
They're coming through you at that point, correct?
Absolutely.
So now you put yourself in the position to be injured.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then the biggest thing is when you try to facilitate an arm tackle, it's more of a reach, and you're already at a disadvantage. So you're holding back what's natural to you, basically, and that does increase the means of an injury for the defensive guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for all you Jaguar fans who thought last year that the defense was missing a lot of tackles, I think Mr. Eldridge, I'm not making an excuse for the poor tackling. I'm just saying that he's given us a little insight to what it possibly could have been, that defensive player trying to readjust in the last moment, right? Okay. All right, so thank you for that. Let's jump back into your story. So you're in Detroit going through training camp. How does that season go for you?
Make it to the final cut. Again, mentioned in my story, we talked about pink slips, and that was still the method there. Everything was pink slips. So when you're walking through and you've made a great bond or relationship with certain guys, and you start seeing them packing their bags up, getting ready to leave, it's a little difficult, you know, and it gives you a great sense of accomplishment for a guy who's still there and still in the grunt of things with the rest of the guys. It was an honor to be a part of that organization. They had probably 3 or 4 other linebackers who could have made the cut, but they chose me. So being able to go home and be a lion, and say, hey, I made it, made the final cut. And this is around the time a lot of scrutiny was around player parties. They had the big incident on the boat in Minnesota. There were a couple other engagements that were considered unethical or non-professional. So we kind of took the back end to it, but we still celebrated as a team. And getting ready for the season is a different type of game. Because you're looking more at where you are today as far as just the capability of your staff, the members of the team, and you have to remember this is a business, so they're prior planning. Whether your future is there or not, they're always planning ahead.
Yeah.
So having that in the back of my mind and still just trying to thrive through where I am today and moving forward, being a player, just being on special teams, it was a little tough, but at the same time, I want to enjoy the fruit of my labor because I finally made it.
Right. So you get through that year.
I didn't get through that year. I actually got hurt. Monday night, we played against the Rams.
In Detroit, in Ford
Detroit,
Field. How was it playing in Ford Field? Because everybody's not going to have that experience to even, let alone be a player, but even go as a fan.
The Ford family was a great family overall. They actually had different areas set up for the players as far as their ability to come in and enter and exit the building. I love the fact that from family, whenever I brought anyone up to come to the games, they were facilitated from the time they got out of their car to their seat and back to their vehicle. It was a special place. The lights and smoke that you see now, all the fireworks that go off, there's nothing like coming out of the tunnel.
Yeah.
I mean, pregame was just, it was unbelievable. You know, every day I thought I was still in a fairy tale.
Yeah.
Because again, this is what I dreamed about from a child.
Yeah.
And just moving forward there, it had it's mostly ups than downs, but some of the downside of it was just turf. You're practicing on turf, you're playing on turf, so it's hard on your body.
Yeah.
It's almost like running on what I consider to be concrete with just a little bit of carpet over the top of it.
Yeah.
So it was old school turf. It's not the new turf that they have with the tire tracks in it. It was a very hard surface. Falling in the turf, turf burns, just like carpet burn, rug burns.
Yeah.
They really taught you to have character, basically.
Yeah.
But just the overall dynamics of the team and the staff itself, it was a great experience. Wouldn't trade it for the world.
Yeah.
Again, just hate I got hurt.
Yeah.
But
and what
had
was
the
your injury?
I broke my foot.
Wow.
So I shattered the main portion of your foot. So say this is your ankle. So I shattered the main portion of my foot that connected with my ankle. It split like a vein. Tore my posterior and exterior tendons on my ankle also. So it was almost reconstructive surgery.
So that was during practice or in a game?
That was during practice, right before our Monday night game against the Rams.
Wow. So I don't know if I want to. So I don't want to say what does that feel like, but what goes through your mind because I've heard it go both ways. Breaks feel different than tears.
Right.
But you did a little bit of both. So you hit the turf. Do you automatically know at that point, like, I'm done? Like, do you feel the extent of the injury at that point?
So I remember the play like yesterday.
Wow.
Almost. So there was a guy named Sean Rogers, Big Baby is who they called him.
Big Sean Rogers.
Big Sean Rogers.
Plug up the middle, Sean Rogers.
So there's a play in football that's called an ISO. And back then they had, dynamically was fullbacks in front of the tailback. So the fullback would lead into the first gap between the center and the guard. And the linebacker's responsibility was to meet the fullback in the hole and make the running back change directions, basically. So I'm running into this fullback, and Sean Rogers steps and falls on my ankle. And I hear it pop instantly. And I knew something was wrong.
Yeah.
But knee-jerk reaction, I jumped up. I got up. Didn't lay on the ground again because, like I told you, you're falling in football and in a professional manner at practice, it's a big no-no.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, get up. So I get up and come off the field, and I just knew it wasn't right. It
You
was
walked
numb.
off the field.
I walked off the field.
Okay. Interesting.
Within a 24-hour time frame, my ankle was the size of my thigh. Instant swelling.
Wow.
MRI, complete tear. Came back to Birmingham, rehab with Dr. Andrews,
Okay.
which is
We know
one of
Dr.
the primary
Andrews.
doctors
Yeah.
down in Birmingham, Alabama, back at UAB again.
Yep.
So I'm back down there with them, and
So does the team send you immediately off? Like, why didn't you stay at the facility?
the team sent me off.
Okay.
So basically,
They
once
send you to Dr. Andrews.
initially we had a team physician there who saw me, and I had my MRI there, and he told me it was broken, and they asked me I could actually rehab and facilitate it there, or I could go home, because being a guy from Alabama, I'm back at UAB,
Yeah.
which was one of the higher upscale places you could go for any rehabilitation at that point. So I went back home and rehab.
Yeah. And you're how old at this time?
24.
Yeah. So walk us through the moment where you're packing up your things because you have to leave the facility. You're getting on a plane. Is your phone ringing? Is your agent calling? Family members? What's going on?
Everybody's calling.
Yeah.
I couldn't really pack up and take my stuff on my own, so a lot of stuff was shipped back to me. Talking to Mark Mayhew at Player Personnel, he told me, he said, hey, just get well. We'll talk about it afterwards. I'll be checking on you.
Yeah.
So I go home, schedule my surgery, started heating ice in my foot, trying to keep the swelling off of it, taking a couple pain medications at the time. Everybody's calling asking what's next.
Yeah.
So I just basically stopped answering my phone because,
Yeah.
you know, it was hard enough that I had to deal with the reality,
Yes.
but to keep
Yeah.
being reminded about
Yeah.
it was something different. So
Yeah. Who's around you during this time? Does your agent come in? Is your family support there? Who is helping you rehab?
my agent came in, my mom came up, my girlfriend at the time was there, so, and she was still in school, so we all just kind of roundabout and made sure I made it to the facility because I was still going up to Andrew's place prior to the surgery, just getting stem therapy on it, cell therapy on it, still doing ice, cold compressions. Actually got to take a boot home, so I did that at home as well. And just waiting on the day to have the final call as far as getting the surgery. And after I had the surgery done by Dr. Andrews, it was a long process. It took me
Yeah.
about 9 months
Yeah.
to recover from it.
Yeah. So after the surgery, does Dr. Andrews give you any insight on your football career at that point?
He told me it was something I could recover from.
Okay.
He said that you'd probably be able to run again sooner than later. But keep in mind, so as far as the NFL goes, this is where the majority of your players are sent. So I had guys there like Drew Brees had just torn his shoulder.
Yeah.
Takeo Spikes was injured. David Batista had tore his tricep off the bone. So there were a ton of celebrity guys who were still
Yeah.
considered athletes to some extent, trying to rehab and get back into the game. So I figured I had a fair shot there.
Yeah.
Throughout the rehab process, it was very strenuous. It was just like being in two-a-days. You'd go to the facility and actually go through therapy twice a day for 2 to 3 hours a day. I still try to keep in contact with everybody. It's still in Detroit, letting them know what my progression rate looked like, where I was headed, what was next. They actually had started the league up, the NFL Europe League, so that was going on, and they were getting ready to send players there. He was like, do you think you're going to be able to make it during this time so we could gauge your progression on your ability to come back into the game or not? And so I'm steadily making decisions
Yeah.
that are impactful to my future in the NFL while I'm rehabbing.
Yeah.
At that point, I started saying that, you know, I figured I wouldn't make Europe, but I wanted to get back in time for training camp.
Yeah.
And so what I did was actually rehab to a place at about 9 months to where I could run again. And I tried to go back into the NFL. So I went back up, had a physical done. Immediately got released on waiver. They said, hey, we don't have a spot for you now. We'll keep in contact with you. So what I started doing was looking at arena football.
Did you pass your physical, though?
I did.
Okay,
Passed my
so
physical.
you were back up to par. Rehab went well. Things are going well. So at this point, you're just kind of focused on getting back to
in the
football
game,
shape.
figuring out what kind of football, what does that look like?
Yeah,
Football shape.
yeah.
How far out of shape am I? Getting back in pads, getting used to hitting, putting pressure on my ankle, getting the confidence back and being able to play again as just as a man in general. Because if anybody tells you about injuries, once that happens, you second guess yourself, and your ability at that point. So it's getting that trust factor back in play for myself to be able to go out and perform at a professional level again.
Yeah. So at what point, because you said you were looking at arena football, NFL Europe, so what was kind of helping you make the decision on what avenue to go?
What timing was one, and then just based on where I was from a financial standpoint, that was another decision making. So I went to Las Vegas to play arena football as a Las Vegas Gladiator. Totally different sport.
Yeah. Yeah.
Totally different sport. Stayed there about 3.5 months. Left there and went to LA and played on their arena team in Los Angeles.
Okay.
Same thing. I just thought it would be different to get a chance to go to LA. And the game wasn't what it was.
Yeah.
I had my first son at the time, so it was time to say goodbye to the game.
Yeah.
I had to let it go, and that was a struggle in itself to just walk away from it,
So at what point do you make that decision, and what is going through your head to say, because so a lot of times we see guys, they're physically unable to do it. They have a career-ending injury, or they've had too many concussions. The doctor says you can't play anymore, tore their knee too many times, whatever the case may be. You were physically still able to perform at a high level, it sounds like.
Right.
So how do you walk away from the game at that point?
Well, again, it was a priority thing. So having my first son, I realized that the importance of having a father there with your kid. And my heart really hadn't been in it since I got hurt. So just making a decision with myself once I realized that I needed film to get back into the NFL, the journey and the self-centered that I'd have to be at that point as an athlete just really changed the dynamics of my life, because I knew at some point I had to let it go anyway, and it was either now or never. Either I would suffer or my family would suffer from it. So it was a decision point that I had to make for myself and the betterment of my family.
When you look back on it, did you quit?
I did. Yeah, I walked away from it. I quit.
As
The game didn't leave me. I left the game.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
As an athlete, because I mean, especially football players, y'all don't quit. that could be the difficult part, for you guys sometimes.
So
How do you quit and leave the game that you loved when you've had experiences that you? How does a professional football player quit the game of football?
So I always tell myself this: I didn't quit the NFL. I quit arena football.
Okay. Okay. Does that make it easier?
So that made it a lot easier
Okay.
for me.
Okay. But you left the game.
I did.
Because at any point, I mean, we see it. You've got Last Chance you've got Hard Knocks, you got all of these, documentaries that kind of show the player getting back into it. I mean, I'm sure at some point in a couple months, I'm looking at my fake watch here, we'll see Antonio Brown pop back up, or, for a while we saw T.O., we saw Ocho Cinco, who said they can still play.
Yeah.
We see them going back for it. You left it.
I did.
How do you do that?
Just to be honest, it was, once you realize you make it to a professional level, the love of the game changes. And when it becomes a business, you kind of have to really figure out, why are you doing what you do? And then, like I told you, I had a son. So my first child, I want to be able to run around and play with my kid.
Gotcha.
So if I just broke my foot, what's next? Who's to say it's not a shoulder injury or a back or a neck injury? something that is career ending
Yeah.
and even life determining, so getting to that point to where I guess I hit a mature state of the juggernaut days are over for you. It's time to face reality and get back into society and make a honest living for yourself.
Now, this is an opinion question, okay? So this is not to make a dig on anyone, but what I hear you saying is you made an unselfish decision, because a lot of times in your sport, we don't see that. We see guys play when their career could be well over and done. We see them go to back up. They're still in the league when they could be at home being a dad, right? Do you think that a lot of times, is it the separation anxiety piece, or is it an egotistical, selfish decision that sometimes players make to say, I can still play and I'm going to stay. If somebody wants me and somebody's going to pay me, I'm going to stay. You walked away from it. You made an unselfish decision.
I think there are several decision points that an athlete goes through. One being financial, where they are from a financial state. Things that a lot of people don't talk about is just from a professional angle. When you become a professional athlete, you live under a certain standard.
Yeah.
And so once you set that standard for yourself, and my dad used to always tell me it doesn't take much to live. So when you're living beyond means of the average or normal person, that's a way of life for you. So it's the ability to detach yourself from that way of life. And then some of it becomes egotistic because internally, mentally, you've told yourself that, hey, I can perform at this level, or hey, I am this guy. And the reality of it is that you're sitting on the bench now, and you're really not that guy.
Yeah.
And you just haven't come into terms within yourself.
Yeah.
So the team has enough respect for you that they're going to bring you on and carry you along until you make that decision for yourself. And then there are other terms in which a person is just struggling with the limelight of being an NFL football player or being a professional athlete that they don't want to let go. Because now you got to re-image yourself, and this is who I am.
Yeah.
And so when you look at it from that perspective, it's a lot of different things that come into play that the majority of the athletes struggle with on a day-to-day basis. It's just realizing what matters to you, what sacrifices are you willing to, let be for you to have that portion of your life or to have that joy.
Yeah. Did you go through any type of depression?
So I went from about 245 pounds to about 220 my first year out of not playing because
Wow.
I didn't watch it. I didn't go to any football games. It was I didn't even play the video game anymore. It was a very depressed place for me to be. I got tired of people asking me about it. I didn't even want to be known as an NFL player or a football player at all because I felt like that's who people thought I was. And, and those are one of the struggles that I think people that are coming away from the game don't want to face.
Yeah.
So it was a tough battle. I had a lot of great people in my corner. Again, I mentioned to you my faith in Christ, so just staying uplifted there and just knowing that at the end of the day, I determined along with God who I am and who I'm going to be. It wasn't football that made me. I made the game what I wanted it to be for me.
That's awesome. So, did you have a plan after football was over? It is so. What was the plan?
So I went down a couple streams here. My dad had just retired from the military, and he just retired from the Department of Corrections. So I was actually a level 6 correctional officer for about 4 months.
Wow.
And being in that state, I almost felt institutionalized. Going into a facility, working 16-hour shifts. You're in a prison more than you're at home. So, it started to, and being a sociology major, it started to take a toll on my thought process. And it was unhealthy. So I stepped away from that. And my dad said, hey, just try the military. So I go and take the ASVAB test, score off the charts, so you can pick your job. And I start to think about what I had my degree in, what I want to do, and I had the option of going in as an officer, but being an officer, you had to dedicate at least 10 years. And here I am at 23 years old. I'm like, I'm not even going to guarantee my wife at the time tomorrow. You want me to get an Army 10 years? Like, no, that's just not going to work. So I didn't go that route. I went in as a enlistee. I joined the military, and I was a signal support specialist. So I went into IT.
Okay.
Served my country proudly on active duty for about 5 years.
Thank you.
And then I went into the reserve for 2 years. And throughout the deployments, throughout learning more about who I was in specific, I knew that the Army wasn't a long-term goal for me. Mm-hmm. It was a stepping stone. And I used it just for that. As far as going back to school, continuing my education, I picked up some certifications, and it set a platform for me. I got out of the military in 2012 and moved down here to Jacksonville, Florida. I was stationed up in New York, Fort Drum, New York.
Thank God you're not in New York now.
Woo! I know, you're right.
No offense, New Yorkers.
So I get down here, and it's like recreating myself again. So
Yeah.
I go from the Army back in the civilian world, and it's, okay, who's Nigel? And this guy, Larry Augustine, called me and said, hey, I read your story. Not I saw your resume. I read your story. I heard about you.
And what was he referring to?
The dynamics of me going from a professional athlete into the military. So he was
Gotcha.
intrigued with me. And so he brought me in and said, hey, I got this job for you, but I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about you.
Wow.
And let's just say that the door did open because of the task and the lifestyle that I had prior to coming back into the civilian world. So football did pay out for me in the long run. And I always tell the kids, it's just follow your dream and use your avenue for other assets in the long run. Don't focus just solely on sports. But back to my story.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get there, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But Larry called me in and he said, hey, I've got this job, and I think you'd be a great fit for it. It's just program management, and I work in the security department. I said, okay, so what does that entail? Well, you're just going to keep track of, different audits we have, different reviews we have, where we travel, things of that nature. And it was interesting to get back on the, I guess you'd say, non-security vector and non-military vector, and just get back in civilian world and meet with people who day-to-day problems consist of having flat tires or children at home sick.
Yeah.
Just the basics. Getting back to the basics is what I call it. So he and I spent a little time together, and he told me, he said, man, this field is going to boom. He was like, in 5 to 10 years, Jacksonville, Florida alone will have over 50,000 IT jobs.
Wow.
So he said, if this is something you want to do, I can help guide you into a great career path.
Yeah.
And I took his advice. Stayed under him for about 3 years. Got A+ certified, Network Plus, Security Plus certified ethical hacking. It got to a point where it was like, okay, I want to do something different.
Yeah.
So leave that company and go to a fashion company and work for them in security for about a year and a half, 2 years. Continue to pick up certifications. My actual certified Chief Information Security Officer now, so it was just stepping stones and continue to progress outside of sports. So I had the mindset failure wasn't an option, so whatever I was going to do, I just continued to drive through that. So stayed within this organization for about almost 2 years and left there, and now I'm a member of Florida Blue Team.
Okay.
So I'm here in Jacksonville, Florida. I'm in the management staff for information security over at Florida Blue, and I've been there about 2 years now, and I love it.
When you look back on your meeting with Mr. Augustine, was his name, what do you think intrigued him most about your story?
Probably the tenacity to drive, to continue to drive past any adversity that I'd experienced. And he just saw my testament of fortitude. Like, this guy is somebody who, regardless of what he's been up against, has found a way to overcome all obstacles. So I think he knew I'd push through whatever adversity faced me.
Yeah. So what do you think, if you could share with young athletes, what foundation pillars did you learn as an athlete growing up that have kind of helped with your success in your life after football?
God first and foremost, family second, and surrounding yourself around positive people. So despite whatever you're going through or wherever you are in your life, just make sure you have positive influences around you. Smile, laugh, enjoy the little things, because tomorrow isn't promised. So every day wake up with the mindset to do something different and to better yourself as well as others. I have this rule of thumbs in which I try to participate in as far as levels of success and the people that I venture with. I try to make sure that I have more people who have established and trended higher from a professional standpoint and from a social standpoint than I am. And I also surround myself around people who have not come to the place where I am. So I don't live in a stagnant life to where people who have experienced the things that I have, we just continue to feed off one another and filter one another. It's those who can help build me and those who I can help build is what carries me, because I find joy in mentoring and treating to other people, but I also find joy in being lifted myself.
Yeah. So just assuming, like as most former professional athletes, you have moments where you miss the game.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What do you do to get through those moments?
Jim, I have kids, so I look back at Nigel Jr., Pierce, Lena, just looking forward to the day when they can play, living through them, living through other kids, just continue to pour back into the community, and just be able to give my testimony.
Yeah.
Just knowing that, I did make it this far because I did trust in somebody else outside of myself. I did trust in God. I did have faith, and just continue to drive and thrive for excellence in whatever it is that I have remaining in my life as destiny for me. And just the pouring out into others, that helps me get through it more so than anything. Giving my testimony helps as well. So just finding the outlet in those things and just looking forward to the future and what's next for Nigel as well as his family.
Yeah. So final moment here. Let's look at the camera. What would you say to your children? Because they didn't get to see you play. So at some point, especially for the youngest one, you guys will get to share the stories and, talk about your experiences and maybe even encourage the two boys to maybe go after that if that's their desire. What would you tell them about Nigel, the football player?
Nigel, the football player, was a very dedicated, driven individual. I wouldn't take no for an answer. I always went above and beyond. Whatever goals I had for myself, I placed those same standards on other people. I was always a person of perfectionist. I thrived in excellence, and I wouldn't accept anything else out of my teammates. So I tried to live above reproach for the most part, and I tried to carry most of the other individuals with me in a positive manner. Just stay focused. Stay focused on what matters. And just know in life there are going to be distractions. There'll be other things of interest to you. And don't sell yourself short or close the door on any opportunity that presents itself that could be an enlightenment for yourself as well as others.
Fill in the blank. Life after football is?
IT. I have a nonprofit now called the Great Foundation. It's the George Ralph Eldridge Youth Foundation, in which I mentor back to children. And that's exactly what we talk about, is life outside of your sport. And our logo and our slogan is winning, where winning off the field matters. So, just knowing that everything we do has a reason behind it and a purpose in it, is driving in that lane to where you're working towards your goals on and off the field. Knowing that one day that great sport that you're playing will come to an end is what's next for you. And then my portion of it is, how do I become a part of your success story?
Phenomenal. Thank you so much for coming back.
Absolutely.
Part
Thank you
two
for
has
having
been
me.
just as phenomenal and exciting as part number one. Now, listen, we told you in the beginning of the show that Mr. Eldridge is on LinkedIn. We're going to work on getting his Facebook page up and running. Don't worry. I'm going to personally make sure you guys have a way to contact him, since he does mentor young kids, and I'm sure that any parent watching would count it a blessing and a pleasure to have their child mentored by you. So make sure you look him up on LinkedIn at Nigel Eldridge. You know where to find us here on Get in the Game. YouTube channel is Get in the Game with Satara J. You can also follow us on 904live.com. Head on over there, like that page, share, and subscribe. Then you can follow me on Facebook, Satara Bunch. That's Bunch with an E. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Bunch, LEGZZ. And if you or anyone you know is interested in sponsorship or partnering with Get in the Game, there's no other sports show like it. I can guarantee that. Send us an email at getinthegameshow@gmail.com. As always, thank you to my producers, Mr. Stefan Petty, Mr. Allen, the best momadre in the world who you probably didn't hear this evening, Melinda Henry, and my stylist in Atlanta, Barbara J. We will catch you guys next week. You don't want to miss next week. I'm not going to tell you what it is because you have to be here to find out. You guys stay safe. Practice your social distancing. Wash your hands, which means don't eat all the hand sanitizer. You got to wash 20 seconds, say your ABCs, or recite Psalms 91. And we'll see you guys next week. Have a great evening.